All right, everyone, we are going to get started here. Let me change my thing here so you can see me bigger. I'm excited to be with you today. We have a very, I think, super helpful topic today, which is discussing the similarities between startups and your career and lessons that we can learn to help us maybe avoid some very common mistakes that startups make and avoid making those same mistakes in our careers, whether you work in user experience, a UX writer, a researcher, maybe you're a product manager. And really, regardless of what stage you're at, whether you are at the beginning of your career or someone that I call a career launcher or a career switcher, where maybe you're coming into user experience from a different industry or previous career, and then a career climber, someone who's maybe been working in this field for a while, and you are now thinking to yourself, what do I want to do next? Where do I fit in the world of UX or product as it is today? So before we get started, I just want to do a quick tech check. Make sure you can hear me and see me okay. The comments should be rolling in here. So let me just get to my right window here. I'm getting better at this streaming to many places situation. But I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. So let me go to the chat. 1 second. Okay, hopefully we're not going to get any feedback. All right, the chat is loading. And, all right, I think we are good. I think you can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so before we get started though, I want to get to know a little bit more about who you are and where you are in your career. So if you've been with me for the past couple of days, you've heard me talking about these three kind of categories of people. Are you a career launcher, a career switcher, or a career climber? Let me know in the chat. I would really love to know. The researcher in me can never stop doing research. And also, I would love to know where you are from. So let me know that as well in the chat. I know we have people from all over. When we did this a couple of days ago, we had people from London and Brazil and Canada and all over the United States and many other places. So I'm curious where everyone is joining us from today. And I also want to remind you, I said this the other day as well, but I am launching something called the Career Strategy Lab, and that is a job search accelerator for UX and product people. And it's really designed to help get you through the job search process with a lot less overwhelm and stress and a lot more clarity, so you can stop spending so much time on it and work smarter on this whole process and not necessarily harder. So maybe some of you have already applied. We've had now 200 people who are coming to learn more about this next week. But if you want to apply to see if that Career Strategy Lab is a fit for you, then head over to careerstrategylab.com and you can get all the details. And you have to submit your application by June 2nd, which is next Wednesday. And then on the Thursday, June 3rd, I'm doing another live stream to do a more in-depth training for people interested in that, to give you some really actionable things you can do for your job search right now, and then figure out if you think joining the Career Strategy Lab is something that you might want to do. So that's coming up next week. So get your applications in, because we have a limited number of spots that we can take to accept people. So let's get started here. I said I want to talk about the similarities between a startup and your career. And Let's talk about startups. Maybe some of you worked for startups or are currently working for a startup. I have worked at startups in the past and I continue to, and a lot of the UX consulting that I do with clients in different industries. But I'm curious from your either firsthand experience working in startups or just from your general knowledge of startups, because you're kind of keeping an eye on that and keeping a pulse on that. What are some of the reasons that you think startups tend to fail or not work out? Let me know in the chat some of the reasons that you think startups maybe don't end up starting up, or maybe don't end up getting traction, getting users, and then they have to shut down because they just realized, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea or as good of idea as we thought it was. So let me know in the chat some of the reasons. I'm just looking here. Oh, I lost my window. Where did it go? Oops. Okay, cool. So some of the reasons that startups fail, let's see. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, I lost it again. All right, too big of a team. That's interesting. That's a good one. Too big of a team. I think what this person means is maybe they grew too fast and then ran out of money. That would be my guess. I have definitely seen that happen before. So totally agree with that. What other reasons do we have? Competitors, yep. Maybe not getting to market fast enough or not being different enough than their competitors so that people could know, why should I choose A over B? Colleen said the plan for growth, maybe not a long-term plan. Yeah, so maybe they were able to get their idea out the door and last for 6 months or 12 months or something, and then they didn't have a long-term strategy of how they were going to, for example, get revenue, right? Maybe they focused on users in the beginning, and then they never thought about, how are we going to make money, which is often something that many startups think is a good strategy. Okay, Lindy says lack of investment in foundation employees to get product in stores. Yeah, that's a great example of why a lot of startups don't make it. It's because maybe they hired the wrong people at the wrong time, right? Maybe they hired a ton of salespeople. I have been in this situation. I worked with a company and they hired a massive sales team. But the thing was, they didn't have enough engineers and UX people to actually make that thing happen. So that could be a challenge. And then the other challenge with that was that the salespeople were out like promising all these companies all these things, and the developers and the UX people were like, we are just hearing about this now, right? Okay, I love this discussion. Rushing the process. Ricky said that, yes, rushing. Maybe we talked about this on Tuesday if you were here, but the idea of jumping right into high fidelity design and prototypes and just product really, and not spending enough time in that research phase, in that product strategy phase, and really figuring out who are we making this for, what problem are we solving, and what would be the right product and the right features in the right order to solve that problem. So yeah, Ricky, I love that one. Okay, management, okay, that could sometimes be an issue. I think to extrapolate on that one a little bit, one thing I hear a lot of times is that sometimes startup founders are so close to their idea that they kind of just insist or demand that the product must work this way because in my gut, I know this is how it should work. And sometimes that works. Oftentimes it doesn't. So my kind of rule of thumb is that even if we have a hunch about something, we should still do research to confirm that. So yeah, Ashu, management can sometimes get in the way of themselves. Someone said there's no need for that product or service. Exactly. Similar to what we just said, you might have an idea for something, but if you don't go out and validate that, then that can be a problem. Okay, I want to just keep going really quickly here. Lacking viability in an MVP, Ellie said. Yeah, so maybe this is a two-part answer. Maybe part one is not kind of going the minimum viable product route, and maybe the startup went and built a product with a ton of features and then launched it, and people came in and they were overwhelmed because the product did so many things. So that could be one challenge. Or realizing that whatever they did build in the beginning, it really, no one wanted it. So yeah, Elliot, I love that one. Losing momentum. Eduardo said losing momentum. Okay, I love this one. Yes, so burnout can be very real, right? When it comes to why so many startups fail. Okay, so I think we have now done a great brainstorm on all the reasons that startups might fail. And the one thing that really jumps out to me, if I had to choose just one thing, although as we know, there's so many, but the thing that really jumps out to me is that so many teams build before they do any research. So, like I said, they jump right into high fidelity designs. They skip over research. They skip over talking to customers, skip over testing little prototypes and doing anything they can to try and pre-validate whether or not this problem that they think exists. Is it actually a problem for people? And secondarily, are people actually looking for a solution to that problem? And then I guess third, are people willing to pay money to solve that problem? Those are kind of the three kind of milestones that I'm looking at when I'm doing early research. Does the problem actually exist? Do people realize this is a problem? Are they looking for a solution? I guess there's four. And then are they willing to pay for a solution? So to summarize, the biggest problem, if I had to choose one, just one, the biggest problem is really around that idea of product market fit, right? Does the product we're creating solve a problem for our market? And does our market or our people, do they want to actually have that problem solved? And how motivated are they to solve that problem? I just want to check into the chat here. Yeah, Francisco said, how many times have we heard the phrase, we know our users the best? Exactly. Okay, Andrew said, engineers will engineer. Exactly. I could name off a lot of products that I think are engineered, designed by engineers. Although I have worked with a lot of engineers that are actually amazing at design. So you never know. Okay, Lindy said, I've seen people build applications from the back end to the front end and it was not good. Exactly. Okay, so I think we're on the same page about some of the reasons why startups don't really end up working out. And this is going to come back to your career in a second. So hang with me. But question, have you ever worked at a company that did any of the things we just discussed, meaning this product market fit? And while you're typing in the chat, I'm going to just share a couple of examples that really come to mind. I don't know if any of you remember Google Glass. It was Google's glasses that had like the screen and the lens and you could do stuff and tap on it. And everyone was so excited for Google Glass. It was like going to be the biggest thing ever. They had this huge launch. And then what happened? Is anyone wearing Google Glass right now? No. I don't know how long Google Glass hung around until they kind of retired it and things like that. But to me, that is a great example of a product that, you know, if you Google Glass, you will find so many articles where people were truly imagining like it was going to be like the iPhone. Like once Google Glass came out, we'd all be wearing them. And that just didn't happen. And I have to wonder, did they do enough research? What type of research did they do? I hope they did some research, but it just seems to me that there must have been some disconnect because the lack of adoption of Google Glass was so huge. I'm just looking in the chat here to see some other examples. I know you guys have said Okay, the Segway. Yeah, that's another one. I mean, is anyone driving around on Segways right now? No. So, another one that really comes to mind is this company called Juicero, Juicero. So, Juicero, if you've ever seen those coffee machines that you put the pods in, so Juicero was like that, but for juice. And it's a long story, but the short of it was this company raised something like, I think it was close to $700 million to make this juice machine that you put the juice pods. It wasn't a pod, it was kind of like a plastic bag full of frozen vegetables and fruit and stuff. And you put it in, and then it would juice your juice. And the idea was making your own juice was so time consuming and messy and stuff. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just get these pre-cut fruits and vegetable things and put them in this machine and it made the juice? Well, I'm hoping I can share a video with you. All right, I'm trying to share a video with you, and it's highly possible this will not work because I tested this before and I was having all kinds of issues. So I'm going to have to contact the streaming service thing I'm using. Okay, it doesn't work, but here's the thing. I'll do a demo. So the juice machine, the challenge was some reporters got their hands on one of these juice machines. And there's a video out there. If you just Google Juicero machine or something, you'll find a video where on one side of the screen, it is the machine doing the juicing. And on the other side of the screen, the reporters are squeezing the bag literally with their hands, just like, and they make the juice just fine just by squeezing it with their hands. And the video is really powerful, but you can imagine the shock and so many questions that came up when everyone realized you don't need to buy this machine that cost hundreds of dollars and who knows how much the individual juice bag or vegetable fruit bag subscription thing was going to be. But you didn't need that big machine. You could just literally squeeze the juice yourself. So needless to say, Juicero no longer exists. And I have to, again, imagine, based on everything I've read, it seems like they kind of didn't do enough research and also were maybe somewhat hindered by a founder who really wanted to make a product for himself. Anyway, I won't go into it. I could talk about it forever because I've studied this quite a bit, but Juicero is another example of where maybe the product market fit wasn't there and it lacked research. But I mean, they raised like, I think over $700 million. Some of you have heard about it. Yeah, the video is hilarious. So maybe someone can find it and put it in the chat. But so those are some of the big failures that jump out to me. There's so many others. Another product that jumps out to me, which is still around, is Evernote. So maybe some of you use Evernote, and I didn't use it, when it very first came out. But anytime I have tried to use Evernote, I get totally overwhelmed because to me, Evernote feels like a product that has too many features. It's almost like it's been over-engineered. And then when I come into it, I don't know kind of the one or two amazing things it does. Like there's not one or two things I can master when I come into Evernote to really be able to feel like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I should keep using this, because I get distracted by, and I forget the names of everything, but there's notes and notebooks and stacks and this and that. And it's like, whoa, there's too many things for me. So that's an example of where maybe sometimes they launched and they got some traction, and then they kept adding features, and then new users were like, I don't understand this. The old users might still understand because they've kind of been along for the whole journey. But I think one of the challenges is that as you progress as a product, if you have too many features and you don't think about your new users, you're not helping them understand like what's the one or two things that you do really, really, really well. I'm seeing a lot of you have heard of Juicero. Some of you found the video. Thank you, whoever posted that. Theranos is another example. Yeah. So, and it looks like I'm not the only one when it comes to Evernote. Okay. So, here's the thing. When it comes to your career, as you can imagine, there's a lot of similarities between you and a startup, right? Because startups are trying to find the product market fit. They're trying to find customers. And in your case, you, as whoever you are, a writer, a researcher, a developer, a designer, a product manager, you are a product and you are looking for customers. And the customers are the people that are going to hire you and interview you and things like that. So I want you to kind of shift your mindset to the idea that you are a product. Companies are inviting you for interviews and inviting you to work at their companies because they're hiring you to do a job. If you've heard of the jobs to be done framework, the same thing applies to your career, right? So if you want companies to notice you, meaning if you want your quote customers to notice you, you have to have a really, really clear message of what you do. And you have to have a very clear differentiator that helps you maybe stand out from your quote competitors. And you have to be able to do that very quickly, because in the same way that when your friend or colleague tells you about a new company and you go to the homepage and you're like, oh, what's this about? And then you think, don't have a clue what this is. They didn't explain it very well. That's the experience that many people might be having if you are applying to roles and you're not hearing back, because maybe you are not doing a good job at communicating who you are and what you do and the value you bring to them and the problem that you solve for them and their company, right? So if you are on board with me in this kind of changing our mindset about our careers, let me know in the chat if you're going to start thinking about yourself as a product. And I really believe this. And if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter or wherever else I am, I think I'm only streaming to 3 places right now, but possibly others. But you may have heard me say this before, but I really, really believe that the most important product you will ever work on is you. And it's kind of ironic, right? Because we spend all this time in whatever company we're at right now working on their products and applying user experience and design principles and things to the products we're working on. But how often are we applying it to our own careers? So that's my hope for you, that we really make this mindset shift and start thinking about ourselves more like a product. Now, I just want to jump back to the chat and see a couple of things here. All right, looks like everyone is still with us. Yeah, you're a product, you're a service, but if you can just shift your mindset from I'm a product, I'm looking for customers, which are the recruiters, the hiring managers, companies, etc. You can take a lot of lessons we have learned and will continue to learn from what startups do well and don't do well and apply that to our career. Now, one of the things that I think can help minimize a lot of risk when it comes to startups is startup incubators. There's so many of them out there, and I've been a mentor at different startup incubators and spoken at different ones all over the place, really. And one thing I will say is that these startup incubators, on one hand, they kind of can provide you with a false security blanket, because I think a lot of startups go into them and think, okay, if I just join this, then everything's going to be okay and it will just all work out. And that's not reality. But I think the companies that really do succeed in these startup accelerators are the ones that also are very kind of proactive and go the extra mile and put in the extra effort. But the reason that I think startup accelerators work really well is because they give you three things, okay? The first thing that startups do is they give you a path, meaning a lot of times when I've worked with startups and they are not in some type of accelerator, they're kind of all over the place. Like maybe one startup I worked with, for example, in the first or second meeting, they handed over 200 screens of balsamic wireframes. And it was like so overwhelming for our team because we had 200 screens of wireframes, but what we didn't have was research. So I kind of felt really bad for them because they obviously put a ton of effort into making these 200 wireframes, but I thought, oh, they were probably just making a lot of this off of their assumptions. So when you join a startup accelerator, one of the benefits is you have this clear path, so you can avoid this going around in circles like, oh, let's make a prototype, let's make a logo, let's do this, let's do that. Let's Google all these things that we don't know how to do. When you join a startup accelerator, you end up with a clear recipe, a step-by-step process to follow. So that's one of the things I think is super valuable for startups. Now, when it comes to your career, are you like these startups? So are you maybe guilty of meandering around and Googling this and Googling that and trying to kind of make up your own process? Let me know in the chat, because this is one of the big similarities I see between startups and people in their careers. A lot of times startups are just kind of all over the place. And like I said, they make all these wireframes, jump to high fidelity and things like that. And then they haven't done the research. So are you maybe guilty of what that startup was guilty of, meaning jumping into design prematurely? Or maybe other things, right? Maybe you have gone off and applied to 100 jobs, but you haven't, first of all, sat down and had an honest conversation with yourself and thought, what jobs should I apply to? If I want to be a UX manager in 2 years or 3 years, what jobs should I be applying to now that would get me the skills and experience that would make me more qualified to be a UX manager in 2 or 3 years? So that's what I mean when I say you need a path, because I see so many people wasting so much time doing things not in the right order or without the proper strategy. And then as a result, that's why it's taking you, 2, 3, 4, 10 months when you thought this would really take 2 months or something like that. Okay. A lot of you are saying, yes, you agree with this. Right. So that's kind of shift number one we want to make. We want to stop trying to like DIY this and reinvent the wheel and instead follow a path, follow a program, right? Similar to these startup accelerators, because that is what helps save these startups a ton of time. When they can go in and they know, okay, I forget how long, they're all different lengths, but let's say it's 12 months. Okay, we're in this 12-month thing and we got to do this in month 1 and 3 and etc. And it just makes everything so much easier and they waste so much less time. So first we need a path. The other thing that I think is really valuable when it comes to startup accelerators is the idea of community. Because a lot of times startups love to operate in silos or in stealth mode, right? Have you ever worked at a company or had your friends work at a company and say, oh, we're in stealth mode? I don't really get that anymore, but I've worked at companies like that, but I just I'm not a huge fan of that anymore because it leaves you in this silo. It leaves you in this echo chamber where you are only kind of listening to yourselves. And the more you're talking about your ideas with the rest of your team over lunch, like the more amazing your ideas seem because you're all just validating each other and you're not getting any external feedback. Or the flip side, you could start to kind of go down the negative path and start to doubt things or spiral, as I like to call it. And then you all get like sucked into the quicksand of doubt and everything that comes with that. So we want to avoid working in a silo like that and being all alone and just hearing our own thoughts and doubts and things like that. And that's one of the things that I think is really valuable when it comes to these startup accelerators, because it gives you a built-in community. It gives you a team of people who are on a similar mission with a similar timeline, following the similar steps in order to hopefully achieve your same goal, right? And this is not just, something that we see in startups, but I mean, it's really anything in life is a lot easier when you do it together. I run marathons, and when I joined a training group, it made me much, much better runner. And in fact, the first marathon I ran was the New York City Marathon. And when you run a marathon, there are these things called pace groups. And the idea is if you run with this group of people, your goal together is to finish the marathon in a certain time. And there's one kind of like leader, it's called a pacer. And they're like a professional runner. And their job is to make sure their group finishes at that time. So my first marathon, I did not run with a pace group. And I still did pretty good. I finished in a little over 4 hours, which is pretty good for your first marathon. But then I ran another marathon a couple of months later. And at the last minute, I decided to run with this little group of people that said, I think the goal was to run under 4 hours or something like that. And I just literally made this split-second decision at the starting line to run with them. And then I took 20 minutes off my marathon time. I finished in 3 hours and 51 minutes and something seconds. But why did I do that? Because I wasn't doing it alone. And instead, I was doing it with a group. And the reason that worked out so well is because you waste a lot of mental and emotional energy no matter what you're doing. But when it comes to marathon running, you waste a lot of energy thinking like, should I run faster up this hill? Should I run slower? How should I take this corner? Should I stop at this water station? Like all of this mental and emotional stuff that's going on, that is draining energy from you. And when I followed the pacer, I didn't really think of anything that. I just literally did whatever they did and it worked. So that is another reason why I think these startup accelerators are so powerful and why we need to have some type of startup accelerator version, but for our careers. And that's why I have been working on this thing I told you about earlier called the Career Strategy Lab, which is what I'm calling a job search accelerator, which totally is modeled after things like startup accelerators and different kind of fitness related things I've been researching, because I think in order to achieve our goals, a couple of the biggest things that can help us get there are to stop doing it alone, to stop trying to DIY it, and instead do it with a group of people and do it with a proven path and steps to follow. So we're not wasting all this time and emotional energy figuring it out on our Sorry, can't talk today. What else was I going to say? Okay, the third benefit, I think, that benefit or lesson, insight we can glean from startups is the idea of, we kind of touched on this earlier, the idea of not trying to reinvent the wheel. And I guess that's really a two-part, because part one is really just knowing the things to do in the right order. Like step one is this, step two is this, step five, et cetera, et cetera. But the other benefit of these startup accelerators is that you are able to access tons of resources and templates and their network and things like that. So if you've ever worked in a startup, you've probably worked, or maybe you didn't work on it, but you know there's pitch decks, right? You make a pitch deck to take and try and raise money or whatever you're trying to do. And if you're doing all this on your own, and I've seen many companies do this, I'm like, why did you make this crappy pitch deck? Why didn't you just like Google pitch deck templates or study other pitch decks? So the benefit to being in some type of startup accelerator is that you oftentimes get access to these tried and tested and proven templates and resources, whether it's pitch decks or other things that can help you when you are getting off the ground. And that's another thing that I've taken into account when I created this job search accelerator, because it's one thing to know the things you need to do in the order in which to do them. But if you're still needing to write your resume from scratch, it's going to take you a while. But if you have a resume like Google Doc template and you have 20 examples of really amazing resumes, you'll probably be able to do it faster. So kind of to wrap up, because I know we've been going a little bit over time here, but I want to see if there might be any lessons or insights from today that you feel like you can take with you right now, hopefully. I'm really, really all about action, and I really want to make sure that you have things you can implement. So maybe if it is as simple as, wow, when I heard Sarah say, I need to think of myself like a startup and my career like a product and me like a product, that like flicked a switch and I totally get it now. Or maybe you're thinking, I've been really trying to DIY and Google everything, and that's sucking a lot of time out. And if I had this path to follow, it would probably be a lot easier. So let me know in the chat. I want to check in here and see what you guys have to say. And I also want to remind you that, as I said, I am doing this career strategy lab, and to get into it, first, you have to apply, because it is not a boot camp. I am not going to teach you how to do user experience or like what's a wireframe or how do I do a survey. We're not doing that. We are laser focused on helping you go through your job search process and everything that's entailed with that, from resume, LinkedIn, and everything in between, because we really want to solve the problem of helping you spend less time wasting less time doing this on your own and get hired faster. That's the ultimate goal. So that's why we're not also teaching you how to do UX, because if we did that, then it would be too scattered. And we'd probably feel like Evernote does for some of us, where you come in and you're totally overwhelmed. So we're very, very laser focused on just the job search side of things. But if you want to apply to that, make sure you go to careerstrategylab.com. We don't we have a limited number of spots, and to my ultimate surprise and shock, over 200 people have applied and been accepted. So then what's going to happen is next week I'm doing like a big, probably 90-minute or 2-hour live training here, just like today, but with slides and like much more formal training, where I'm going to give you a ton of very actionable things to do and teach you my new framework called the 4C framework for how to get hired in weeks, not months. And if you want to know what the 4Cs are, you'll have to come next week. But to do that, you need to apply to the Career Strategy Lab. So I want to check in here. I see some of you are here and you've already applied and you've already been accepted and received all the emails. So I will see some of you next week again for sure. Let me just see here though. Oh, I love what Andrew said. Andrew said, I'm pitching too many features in my portfolio. Yes, good point. So when it comes to the skills, you need to think of them like features. And I love that you brought this up, Andrew, because that can be a problem, right? If you are saying you do everything for everyone and you also do video editing and flash animation and this, that, and the other, it's like, well, what am I hiring you to do? It almost is a yellow flag for me, because I wonder, okay, this person says they can do it all. So like, how good are they at all of those things? So sometimes, you're tempted to take this unicorn route and say that you can do everything like coding and this and that and everything, that may not be the best approach. So keep that in mind because it could be confusing your customers, potential customers, users that are reading, your resume or your website homepage or your LinkedIn or whatever they're reading as their first impression. And you have one shot to make that first impression. So keep that in mind. Even later today, you'll probably end up on some random homepage of some product or service someone tells you about, and you might think to yourself, what does this actually do? I'm not quite sure. Looks nice, but I don't know what it does and why I would pay them money. So hopefully that mindset shift helps just like reframe how you're thinking about all this and keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing this, because I think it will help you be very much more intentional about what you are doing and why you are doing it. I'm going to check into the chat one more time here, and then we're going to go because we're a little over time here. But Gabriel said, for me, it's that you pointed to be honest with yourself and stop reinventing the wheel, to follow the path that's been tried and true. Really hit home for me. Yeah. It's like so many of us, and I do this for many things, but we all think like, I am going to find the one way to do this differently to, do it faster or better than everyone else. And it's like all that time you spent trying to research that special magic formula that you were looking for, you should have just followed kind of the standard baseline process, and you probably would be finished with whatever your goal was or whatever you were working on. So yeah, it can be tempting to go off into research mode and think you're going to, invent some new way to do things. But sometimes it's like, what is the ROI of your time, right? If you're spending all this extra time researching, you could have just been spending that time doing things kind of the standard way. Okay. I hope this was helpful for you. This was a little bit different than what we did yesterday because I really wanted to kind of do a parallel between our careers and startups, because I really, really do think there are so many parallels, and we were only able to just scratch the surface of a lot of them today. But just keep that in mind. I used to have a sticky note on my laptop, and it said, the product of you. It's really helped me make some like key decisions in my career and things like that. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking of your next career move or what you need to do in the next day or week to be able to get closer to your career goals as well. But I have to run. I will be going live next week, definitely for all of you who apply to the Career Strategy Lab and are qualified or accepted. And then also, let me check my calendar. I'm going to be doing another one of these on Tuesday. Oh, Tuesday is going to be good. We will be talking about imposter syndrome and doubt and confidence in your career. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe to that, because then you'll get a notification. If not, it'll pop up on your LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever else you're watching me. But thank you guys for coming. I can't wait to read all of your comments. It just moves so fast, I can't read all of them live. But don't forget, the deadline to apply for that Career Strategy Lab Job Search Accelerator is next Thursday. And that's it. Thank you guys for coming. I hope this was helpful. And I will talk to you very soon. See you later.